Hello everyone, Purple Georgie here, and today I'm once again going to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen. And don't worry, relax, I am not going to shit on Satoru Gojo in this video for like the third time. After all, this video comes out on New Year, so let's not spread any hate, because it's a holiday season and everybody's supposed to be happy. Unless it's a MAPPA studio, because they kinda deserve a little bit of hate. Well, okay, jokes aside, the theme of this video is actually going to be Jujutsu Kaisen and the possibility of the problem that is going to be repeated once again due to MAPPA Studios' recklessness and overall anime industry in Japan. Because, yes, Season 3 of Jujutsu Kaisen is upon us, but upon reading some stuff about it on the internet, I noticed that a lot of people kinda literally forgot what abomination was happening with Season 2 and how so many issues were present when it was released. So in this video, I want to do two things. First, remind everyone the problems that were present in Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 and explain how the hell it happened and what issues MAPPA had and probably still has, which ended up causing issues during production of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. So yes, I'm returning to my prime, to my final form. Many of you probably don't even remember that I was reviewing Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen when it was coming out, along with all the manga panels that were coming out at the same time. Alright, long story short, Jujutsu Kaisen is one of the most popular anime of the recent decade, along with manga, which was so incredibly hyped that literally every time news panel was coming out, people were throwing it all over the internet. And just so you understand how popular Jujutsu Kaisen was at the time, especially because manga was wrapping up its final chapters when Season 2 was airing, literally everyone was hyping it. From random people on TikTok to legit famous soccer players who were throwing up Gojo signs and Sukuna signs in group photos. The hype originally was started by the manga, obviously, but since the popularity was growing really quickly, MAPPA Studios had to put a rush on animating the second season. Because, well, you gotta jump the hype train while it's still going. Well, that caused a lot of executives in MAPPA Studios at the top to put a rush on a lot of employees and force them to work overtime because, well, the episodes are gonna be finished yesterday, so hurry up and finish it already. If you have no idea what MAPPA is, they're a pretty famous anime studio, even though relatively not that new, who worked on the number of very popular anime of the recent years, and unfortunately, that was literally their business plan. Like, Manabu Otsuka, CEO of MAPPA, literally stated on one of the interviews that they're gonna grab as many projects as possible because, well, the studio gotta increase its popularity, so they're gonna finish it all as well as possible, apparently not caring about the employees. And I'm gonna get into details later, but in short, that is basically what happened with Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2. MAPPA executives on top agreed to very early deadline, which was nearly impossible to meet, and for some reason expected regular employees to risk their life and sanity to finish it, like, earlier. And even though in Japan working overtime is something that is culturally fine, in this particular case, people just couldn't stay silent anymore. The weird thing about it is that animation from the start was looking pretty good, but at some point, specifically at episode 12, the cracks started showing. Because, well, if the season started pretty well, towards the end, some episodes were looking more and more like a slideshow. And okay, don't get me wrong, it didn't look as bad as like Blue Lock, for example, or like whatever's happening with the season 3 of One Punch Man. Like, this shit was not as horrible as those two examples. But it was a noticeable downgrade, at least from the start. Like an episode where Dagon showed up, it was pretty, like, shocking to say the least. After all the good animation, the animation just randomly switches to whatever that is. So, like, animation wasn't shit, or it wasn't total shit at the very least, but still it felt really slow. The fight that was supposed to be action-packed and, like, fast-paced was really slow-paced, and all the movements felt like they were missing frames. And yeah, sure, in all this mess, there are still scenes that looked pretty good, like the fight between Dagon and Toji, even though the scenes before and after it are a complete mess. That can be explained that the studio was working in teams, and some teams were working on more memorable fights, like fights with Gojo at the beginning of the season, or fights with Toji, were giving more time to finish their job, because they were basically starting earlier. As such, for example, scenes with Maki feel really weird and slow, and scenes with Toji feel really fast-paced and more action-packed. And then, of course, there is the pinnacle of all of that, which is fight between Maharaga and Sukuna, which originally, I want to point it out, looked like ass, basically. Like, not only was missing frames, there was a lot of, like, I don't even know what's going on in the scene moments. Well, okay, to be fair, again, it's not complete ass at the very least, because, like, half of the fight is pretty well animated. It's just that the overall impression was clearly ruined by the amount of scenes that weren't animated well. And that's not even my words, I mind you, that's the words of the animators who animated this fight. And especially for such big of a fight, like that quality drop was just like way too depressing. So as a result, after all of that, it's really weird for me to see all the praises towards MAPPA Studio when, well, they've made so many mistakes in the past, and yes, sure, they more or less fixed the anime in the Blu-ray version, which you can see on like most streaming services that stream anime, and you can enjoy it, yes. But the whole mess that originally was made, like, I can't get it out of my head, and I can't understand exactly why people just let it go entirely, when, again, I want to point out, the studio forced their workers to work overtime, wasting all the free time available to finish anime in time, and even in this absurd schedule, they still couldn't do it. I suppose it's important to mention the contracts, because yes, MAPPA was obligated to post whatever they made by the due date. That's typically how contracts works. In Japan, there's no, like, due dates that can be moved, because again, the anime typically airs at the TV, and the TV can just post, like, blank black screen for half a minute because, oh well, sorry, the episode wasn't animated in time. But it's also really hard to defend MAPPA because at around that time they repeated this mistake like several times in a row. They just had the same exact issue in Attack on Titan, which came out like before Jujutsu Kaisen. Did you guys not see the pattern of your own mistakes? Oh yeah, also remember Yuji's badly animated face in that one scene where he had a crash out? Like, it was supposed to be tragic, but I legit couldn't stop laughing when I saw it for the first time. And a lot of people have been using the excuse that, oh yeah, there are worse examples, so this is totally fine. Well, to that my answer has always been the same. The answer, well, it could have been worse, is an explanation. It doesn't justify the quality of the product you're trying to defend. Because by that logic we can say, well, the ending of original Evangelion wasn't bad. Because, well, it was a slideshow with a monologue in the background, but, well, I mean, it could have been worse. It's not Blue Lock after all, right? Bruh, speaking of Evangelion, actually, because MAPPA's ambitions are actually going way and beyond in this season, especially in the start. Because picture this, you have a really short fight between Mahito and Nahamaru, which in manga was not that long legitimately. In the anime, Jesus Christ, it's so visually stunning and so much extended that not only they legitimately had to come up with the scenes that were not in manga, and you know how exactly they were coming up with those scenes? They were basically redrawing them from Evangelion. And yes, fine, homages and references is really cool and whatnot, but bruh, guys, you have an anime that apparently you're unable to finish. You have a really strict and early deadline. Maybe you're gonna throw your ambitions away and just gonna focus on copying manga, like, properly instead of extending scenes that weren't existing in manga. But no, the beginning of the season has to be incredibly visually stunning. As a result, we're gonna put in an incredibly extended fight, and who cares that we don't have time to finish the rest of the fight at the end of the season, doesn't matter. Like, seriously, situations like that make me really confused. Like, do those people even understand how and what product they're working with? And okay, I'm once again gonna make a remark, perhaps they just weren't thinking about it during pre-production. Like, maybe I'm over-exaggerating it because I don't work in that business. I have no idea how the market and the structure for anime making actually goes. But as an anime viewer, it all seems really sketchy, not gonna lie. And I feel like absolutely everyone recognized that because the studio later had to not only redraw it for the Blu-ray version, making it much better looking, but even, like, post it in the theaters. And I want to highlight this area of the timeline because, yes, after the episode was released, after it received some negative backlash, after the animators of the studio themselves came out and said, yes, we just couldn't finish it in time because the management of the studio didn't give us enough time, they later redraw that scene, like along with the other unfinished episodes, and aired them in the theater. So they asked money for the mistakes that they have made themselves. These same episodes that were also on the blurry discs that they were selling themselves. So they basically charged twice for something that was entirely their fault. It's like, imagine if the next part of the video is just gonna be like one image with just my background blabbering, and then the next video I'm gonna be like, so yeah, remember how that piece of the video was like total shit, right? So you can go to my Patreon and pay me extra money and see the completed version, which I have finished and fully edited, and only there you can watch it. But bruh, I feel like even in that analogy, it doesn't work because my videos are, well, entirely shit. And also, regardless, I am just a nameless, no-name YouTuber. These guys are an international animated studio who have contracts with, like, large companies and stuff, who probably have, like, I don't know, bigger responsibilities. Alright, let's quickly cover the reaction of the MAPPA animators and how the studio later dealt with it. Because most people express their frustration not with the fact that the studio has forced them to work overtime, but with the fact that they literally didn't give them an opportunity to finish the show, and then later tried to cover up the scandal in like the stupidest way possible. Like, was just freaking terrible. It was pretty clear for everyone that nobody's going to be finished this amount of work, like, meet all the demands in this short amount of time. But whenever somebody voiced their concern, the studio executives on top were pretty much just silencing them because yeah, go do your job, we got it. But after all the animators started speaking out on Twitter about the terrible situation and the working conditions in the studio for some reason started updating their contract and basically handing them NDAs. But the stupidest part, and that's what freaking annoys me the most about this entire situation, is that it's all could have been avoided based on how this situation even started. I do want to specifically establish that in here my criticism goes specifically to the top of the studio, who discussed everything with the publisher and were like, yeah, sure, we'll finish it in time, probably knowing that no, they won't. The funniest part, there were actually rumors spreading around before the episodes that were problematic actually aired. If I remember correctly, the animation director, or I don't exactly remember what his position was called, the animation director of episode 14, which was featuring Fight with Dagon, was, before the episode aired, he was explaining that a lot of workers legitimately just gave up. Like, the deadline was so obscenely impossible, they legitimately just walked out. And somewhere around that, again, before the most problematic episodes aired, a lot of workers from MAPPA started talking on Twitter, aka X, that for some reason they were forced into updating their contracts. And the contract themselves were pretty similar, except for one parameter, which for some reason was forcing all MAPPA employees who signed the contract not to talk publicly about the insides of the studio. And the thing is, I have to point out that NDA, unlike in America, in Japan is not exactly a common thing. Most of the time, bosses just expect their employees to not discuss some private information on social media and in public, and typically the employees actually do that. This is sort of like a norm for Japanese market, so is working overtime a lot. So basically, like, a lot of the market legitimately holds on trust. And that is another reason why those contracts seemed even more suspicious. So, picture how this situation was going on from the perspective of MAPPA employees. They're working on a really popular project. This popular project has a really obscene deadline, like incredibly short. The studio higher-ups expect them to work overtime because, well, the project is really popular, therefore it needs to be finished. If they don't finish it, most likely they're just gonna be fired and unable to find the similar job in the industry, because, well, corporate industry in Japan is a different kind of problem. Typically, if you're fired from one studio, you're just gonna be blacklisted for all the other studios. Most of them probably witnessed the problematic side of the episodes that are about to air, and before these episodes are actually aired, before the scandal actually happens, the studio just shoves them another contract, which basically zips their mouth and prevents them from ever speaking out about any of this. And that's not even mentioning the actual situation of hospitalization of one of the MAPPA animators who worked overtime so much, they legitimately landed in the hospital due to stress and just like inability of their body to continue working. And then here, that's where we come to the problem I fear we might face in Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3. I gotta make a remark. I have an excuse, or rather hope, that it might not be that bad as I'm trying to like force myself into believing, but we'll talk about that in a second. Essentially, yes, MAPPA didn't much change their ways. Essentially, the only thing changed from the last scandal is that now everyone in MAPPA has to sign a contract, an updated contract, which basically just doesn't allow them to talk about any insides of the studio, public or online. So basically, whatever happens now stays in the studio. Even if workers are treated unfairly, they can't talk about it publicly, so we'll never know what's going on. So basically, nothing stops MAPPA from doing the exact same thing, just working by the same formula. You put an obscenely early deadline, workers have to manage somehow, but you get all the profit. Because I remind you, publishers pay you extra if you finish the job quicker, so putting an obscenely early deadline, at the very least financially successful. Only if the last time there was a possibility of workers going on strike and expressing their frustration on social media, which would more or less be a PR problem. Right now, they don't even have to worry about anything. Oh, and by the way, guys, it's important to mention, because I went back to check the sources, and a lot of the statements that animators were posting about MAPPA, where they were accusing them of horrible like working conditions, those posts were later deleted. So I don't know, like I can't exactly state that MAPPA forced them to delete all of this stuff because, well, I have no proof. But I mean, I don't really know any other explanation for why all of this information is now gone, so I don't know. And that is, at the very least, very concerning. Because, again, MAPPA is not doing this for the first time. Before that, they had the same situation with Attack on Titan, and before that, they had the same exact situation with Chainsaw Man. But only if in case of Chainsaw Man, they ended up I think paying workers extra for all the troubles, and I think they built it like a new department or something. But right now, I don't know, because again, the studio executives probably not gonna tell us if the workers have any kind of frustration. Like, if the anime is gonna end up looking great, if Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 is gonna be peak of fiction and animated like it's a masterpiece, how do I know the workers who had it didn't end up freaking suffering the whole way through? Especially when it's animated by the studio who already did that like 3 times before that, and that's the only times that were made public. But okay, I did mention that I do have a glimpse of hope, or maybe rather, it's an excuse I'm trying to make for myself so I would be okay with watching this anime and don't feel bad about it. And it's the fact that somewhere in between those scandals, MAPPA decided to rebrand itself and change the art style drastically, going from hyper-realism to more or less a standard cartoonish look. You can even see it in Jujutsu Kaisen. The first season was like hyper-detailed, the second season was more chibi looking, and the animation was less detailed. Like in the sense that there's less details in the characters, but it's not exactly, like, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just a different kind of art style that is easier to animate, unlike the art style of the first season. And that's basically my hope, just the fact that the art style is now easier to draw. I hope because of that, it's gonna be easier for the animators to deal with the whole situation. And of course, I'm also hoping for that MAPPA realized all their issues like they're said, and the fact that they're not disclosing their private information is just, I don't know, a coincidence, and in reality, they of course listen to all the negative feedback, they care about their workers a lot, and of course there's not gonna be any problems for workers in the studio. They're all gonna be happy, and they're all gonna be very well paid. Alright, that is it for today. I think it was a pretty well reminder of what situation happened with Season 2. And again, I'm expressing my hope that the issues were indeed fixed. Because I do want to see Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, and I really hope there's not going to be another scandal like this. Because, oh boy, I'm really sorry for the people who have to work their asses off in order to give us a few episodes of the anime we really like, which we're probably just gonna binge in one night and then forget about it